Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. And most importantly, you guys, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. I'm going to save the rest of the intro because you all know what to do. I got a very special guest on the show who's literally here to answer all of your questions. He is all of our target market. And I always have to say this, you guys, with a preface, this does not open it up for you guys to go in and pepper his DMs or anything like that. He is literally taking time out of his extremely busy day to add value to this audience, okay? So I have a shipper who is on the show to answer sales questions that I have had people send in to me throughout the week. So with that being said, I have my man Paul back on the show. Paul, what is going on, man? How are you?
What's up, Chris? I'm doing great. How about yourself? Looks like you got a new do going on, a new hairdo. What's up with that?
I did, man. It's 118 degrees out here, bro. I had to shave off the hair and keep it low. I'm doing a bunch of outdoor workouts and stuff right now too. So it's like, I literally have the middle-aged male look down right now. Yeah. I'm just missing white New Balances from my outfit. Yeah. Like, dude, I got the sun hat. I got the sun shirt on. It's just legit now.
You're crushing it, man. You're crushing it. Good luck on you.
Oh man, I love it. Well, hey, let's jump right in. I had people message me throughout the week, and so the first one I got, it's actually from a carrier, and they were wondering. They're like, first off, you're I'm just. He's like, he's like, I'm an LTL and hotshot expedited carrier based out of Dallas. I want to learn how I can acquire customers for a specific niche. Could you maybe, think of a way how I can create a presence for this? How would I directly go to a shipper? He's like, I enjoy working with brokers, but I want to build my own relationships out there. And he's like, I understand you're not a carrier. So like from your perspective, Paul, how could an LTL expedited carrier or asset company, what would you like to see them present to maybe gain some attention?
Man, that's a tough. So I don't do as much on the LTL side. I'm very much on the full truckload side. I'm probably not the best person to ask this question to, but if I think back just to generally, how do you find shipping partners? I want to say there's probably specific conferences for that you can start with. But yeah, I think we're off to a rough start, Chris, because I'm not your LTL guy.
No, I think well, maybe if we phrase it up like this, that he owns trucks, right? And with being an LTL, he's probably got being in Dallas, he's got the local Dallas market on lock. Would you think like maybe going in there, if he had like TSA certification, where if he would do like, hey, I could go and bring your pallets over to the airport for you, would like more specific would probably, at least from my perspective, would probably be the better, with him being, LTL and local in Dallas. Maybe it is the Texas Triangle or something like that could be of value.
I definitely think staying local, it depends on if you're smaller, staying local, finding your niche and staying within that market. We've talked before about, just creating power lanes and try not to be everything to everybody, but just saying, hey, look, I can't do everything for you, but what I do extremely well. And then just maybe even pounding the pavement, right? Going to those areas where we know that there's industrial centers and just poking your head in, leaving a business card, or seeing if you can catch somebody on the dock or in the guard shack and see if you can kind of get somebody in person. Sometimes those old school methods, they can lead to, decent leads that turn into something.
No, and I think like especially, every market right now is saturated from a business development standpoint. But like I would say the further out you get from a metro area, the less and less people are probably reaching out. Not that people aren't calling. And, I think of like Roanoke, Texas. Roanoke's like 30 miles outside of Dallas, for example. Probably not a lot of people who are there as opposed to Dallas, Fort Worth and stuff like that, at least from a business development standpoint. So from my perspective, that's where I like to go. Like I like to go to the suburbs, the outer ring of Phoenix, and then even, northern Arizona and southern Arizona and stuff like that are kind of off the beaten path.
Yeah, makes sense.
Here's another one I got. How can a broker add value to you or any shipper or prospect during the prospecting phase?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways. I think brokers tend to have really good access to data and insights. And, for a shipper like myself, I'm always looking for different angles and how to interpret data, maybe data that I don't have access to, that just gives me some better understanding of what's happening within the market, what capacity and supply look like, where pricing is headed at any given time. Even things like when we talk about shipper of choice and thinking about data of dwell times and detention and all those sorts of things that help improve my business from an operational standpoint that make me a more attractive shipper. There's so many different ways I think to present data that can help me run my business better. And I'm always looking for those insights. And a lot of times brokers can leverage their data and they can anonymize it, right? They don't have to share with me, hey, this is my other shipper, but they can aggregate their data and provide insights that I do find very helpful. And when you can take a very targeted approach with how you use that data and be able to leverage that data specific to that shipper, of all the sales pitches I get, those are probably the most meaningful. Give me some nugget of data, maybe an article, a link to something. I read those probably 75% of the time, which is as compared to the other emails is maybe like 5% or less.
So when you say you read those emails and I'm asking, this is selfishly going to come from me here because, we send out a lot of emails like that. And, frankly, some of the prospects never reply at all. Right. Would it be off-putting to send something like that out pre-conversation being established? Or is that something where say they haven't been responding and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to throw some of our internal market analysis out there. Would you recommend doing that? Or is that something like, hey, you should really talk to them first?
I think you could do both. In fact, during the intro, let's say your intro reach out, it'd be nice if you throw in a nugget right there at the top. That's almost like, think about like if you're writing a song, right? You kind of want that hook. Yeah. What's that one thing that's going to grab their attention? Because I'm going through my hundreds of emails a day. And if there's somebody that I don't know or the subject line doesn't quite make sense, I'll open it. And in my eyes I don't even start reading. It scans through the body of the email and it looks for any sort of insights into what am I about to get myself into here, right? Yeah. And if you can catch me, if my eyes kind of fixate on something, you caught my attention, I'll now read the rest of the email, right? So, so that's definitely good as an intro. If you've already made the intro and things have kind of stagnated, definitely coming back and saying, hey, I'm just popping my email back to the top of your inbox. That's certainly not a great way to kind of re-engage. But if you say, hey, Paul, I was, I know we weren't able to connect on anything in the past, but, I ran across this article in the, in your industry, and I think you might enjoy some tidbits out of it. And, hey, by the way, I picked out this one highlight that was really fascinating to me, and so enjoy, right? I read those very often. And again, you may not get a response.
True.
But I am reading it, and that's a positive step, right? You may eventually get to a point where you send enough of those. And again, you got to be careful with the cadence and the timing of it. But where that email hits at the right time, it's like, okay, this guy's been sending me really helpful nuggets. Like I'm going to give this guy a call.
Yeah. And I look at it like this, from my perspective, like we have we follow a process here where it's like we're not bombarding people every day, multiple times a week, stuff like that. It's like, if we're actively engaged with them, that this doesn't hold true to that. But if this is the initial prospecting phase and say you're reaching out to them and they're not responding, it's like no more than like every 2.5 weeks, they might get an outreach from us at that point, maybe 3 weeks, something like that. Because, again, I don't want to work ourselves out of any potential opportunities in the future. And again, I want to talk about our business without, being too pushy. Like, hey, here's some of our SOPs. This is how we select our carriers. This is how we operate in those ways. It's not, let me bid on your freight or anything like that. I try and like gear it to be more operational focused. These are our capabilities, and keep it short, concise, couple of bullet points, and that's it.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And, one other thing I'm thinking about, there's recently the hurricane in Texas, and, that for some shippers, that creates some opportunity for their product, because they need to get in hand of people that may be displaced or need certain things. And so even in those times, right, I'm just saying, look, I know you've got a facility in, let's say, Houston, right? And man, that hurricane's barreling in. We're here for you. Our lights are on. We're operating. I know the load to truck ratios are 10-1, and it's tough to find a truck right now, but I'm your guy. I can find you a truck right now. I can get your product moving. So just anything like that that you think could actually be of help to the shipper, I think. Again, it may not hit, but those things I think are at least differentiators, so that when the right moment comes, it could present an opportunity.
I like it, man. Cody Kaler in the audience here has a question for you. How do you see the rest of the year essentially going volume wise?
Volume wise, I mean, things are certainly picking up. I think we're seeing the market getting a little bit tighter. Rates have gone up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. That could be, part of cyclicality to my business and what we're shipping, but we have seen rates picking up a little bit. So, we're kind of anticipating that things are picking up overall. I know we've been talking about this for 18 months or more, but generally seeing the signs of, the market picking up. And so definitely finding more of an equilibrium than we've had in the past. So I think that's a positive sign for the carriers, not so much for myself, but this whole thing's a cycle, and so we roll with it.
Yeah, man. I think that it is only a matter of time. And I saw a shipper, I forget his name, and the company he was with this morning. He posted a screenshot actually of somebody's outreach out there, and he's and it kind of alluded to what you were saying earlier, like, hey, we're reading these. Just because we don't need you right now doesn't mean that we're not going to need you in the future. But like, we read these, and if you're sending us and you're not even taking the time to actually personalize some of these messages and stuff like that, like, you're never going to get business. Like, things take time, and what you're talking about right there, like, hey, stuff could break free. You just never know. And I think like you just always have to focus on quality over quantity in the research and like in the prospecting phase. I think so many people are KPI'd, like, you got to send 100 emails a day and make 100 cold calls a day. And you're like, okay, but who are you calling and why are you calling them? Are you just calling them for the sake of calling them? And I think that's why a lot of business development reps and sales reps kind of get hung up on the phone, because they're like, I don't even know why I'm calling you right now.
So, Chris, I do know the ground. We call that the ground and pound, right? Like just hitting the phones, making your $100. It does work though. I mean, I've definitely seen some companies where just pounding your head through a brick wall, and you do that long enough for enough time, and it does work. So it could be frustrating when you're in my seat, right? But I do know for some, it does work. My preferred approach is definitely not that. It's more of what you said, Chris, which is the more of the quality. Again, having done this for 16 years, when I open an email, I've almost trained my eyes to be able to scan through an email and right away be able to get a sense of what I'm seeing before I even really read the words on it. And you can tell if it's generic or not. I will tell you the number one no-no is if I open that and I can tell this is a copy and paste email, done. I'm not going to read more than the first three words. I'm moving on. So that's step one, right? Just if you have a generic email, and again, if that's part of your quantity strategy, which is just copy, paste, that's, in my opinion, pretty useless. And even just a slight degree of personalization could grab the reader's attention. So I think that's at least a starting point. I'm more of a fan of being even more personal than that. Everybody's got LinkedIn these days. You can go on, see what college did they go to, what high school did they go to. Sometimes they have their hobbies and their interests on there, and so you can kind of pick at that and reference something there. they may post things, and so you can reference something that they've posted about. And then that's how you know, like, okay, these people they really care. They're taking that one extra step to learn a little bit something about myself and my business. So it's almost like a trading time for time. If I know you put some time into that message, I'm going to trade a little bit of my time to give you the time of day. You know what I mean? Versus I could tell this email took you 3 seconds to copy and send. So I'm going to give you 3 seconds to read and delete.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. Yeah, I think that, it is very valuable feedback, right? Because, I think like even if you do use a framed email, but taking the time to personalize it a little bit, because if you're, this is just coming from a sales rep here, Paul, where it's like if you're going out there and you need to reach out to multiple people, like if you're niche down where it's like, hey, I'm only going after concrete shippers today, and you take the time to personalize it at least to the recipient instead of saying good morning and just leaving it at that. I think like there are little tweaks that you can do with it, but it can't just be a standard, like the fonts aren't even matching and stuff like that. I think like some people do just they try and just go way too easy with it.
Yeah. The whole font and formatting thing, that used to happen, I'm going to say 50% of the time 10 years ago. And that's probably down to 20% of the time. So the industry, I'll give them credit. Like everyone's getting better about it, but it still exists. And that's kind of crazy to me that still exists, but it has, that particular piece has gotten better.
So I got a question here for you as well. I got a bunch of questions, but here's another one for you. What percentage of your business do you give out to assets, 4PLs, 3PLs, et cetera? Like, how do you allocate that?
So I just came from a shipper conference. And so it was really interesting to get everybody's, this is a very interesting question. I think everyone wants to know how other people operate. From what I've seen, it seems like most shippers, including myself, are somewhere in the asset range of, I'm going to say 50 to 75% asset, and then the balance going to brokers.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, when I was in that room listening to a couple other large shippers, that seemed to be the range in which everybody was kind of operating in.
Okay. So, yeah. With that being said, and because they had a follow-up question to what you were going to answer there, and I think it kind of really goes in line. How do you, like, how much more sustainable will your supply chain be if you change providers, or, kind of as you go out there and you say like, hey, this 25% is brokers, how do you justify changing any of those providers out there? Is it to lower rates per se? Is it you bring in new providers if it's a shorter RFP cycle? What's your thought process with something like that?
Yeah, so we're a more mature supply chain. So I can't speak for everybody. Yeah. I will say we have kind of like a fixed number of brokers that we want in our network, as well as a percentage that we want them to haul. We are very strict with our carrier performance data. So we, leverage a platform where we're measuring on-time delivery, on-time pickup, tender acceptance, a lot of the things that other shippers do as well. And if we see just kind of some brokers kind of falling into that, let's say bottom third of performance, you're kind of on the chopping block, so to speak, right? So when I go into that next RFP, say, okay, look, if we can meet and make a deal happen, maybe we can salvage this, or hey, this is an opportunity for me to maybe churn a little bit of the network. Like we love incumbency. It's really important to what we do. But by the same token, we don't want to be beholden to those incumbents. So we're constantly looking for new potential providers. It's almost like prospecting, right? Like just saying, hey, like I can't say that the 15 brokers that I work with are the best in the industry. There's always somebody better out there. So I'm going to keep my eye out and see, hey, as I see those couple falling into that bottom third, who are those next crop of brokers that I might want to cycle in as I'm cycling a couple others out?
Okay. So how do you brought up that percentage, like it's 50 to 75% asset, and then 25% or whatever goes into the brokerage market. How do you guys come up with those percentages? Is it based on past data where we're like, hey, this, because obviously you have a different perspective because you move a lot of freight compared to most people. So there's probably a lot more science behind your guys' decision on that. What kind of brings that number out?
I think for us, anyways, it has to do with exposure to market dynamics. When you're working with an asset, they're based on they're a cost-based model, meaning, right, they know their inputs, they know their cost inputs, they put a margin on top of that, and they can operate. There's a lot more financial controls over an asset-based model versus a broker that can be subjected to the prevailing market dynamics, right? Supply and demand. So there tends to be more wild fluctuations in the rates, which obviously is when I'm trying to budget for our business. We don't want to expose ourselves to these massive swings in transportation costs. So it's almost like a hedge in a way, right? You want to say, hey, I want this subset of my business to be fairly stable, and maybe there's a percent or two of increase on the rates, or a percent or two of downcrease on the rates. But on the brokerage side, those rates could swing 10% upwards or 20% downwards, and right. So you kind of get the good and the bad of the markets, but that's why we do it, right? It has more to do with just I want to keep some stability in my pricing as much as I can.
Do you? This question's coming for me because I just thought of this. Do
Okay.
you think it would be effective for more brokers and carriers to take your customers' relationships and perception of the service they're receiving into account while they're working with you?
Help me understand that a little bit. I don't know if I'm following that
So
all the way.
obviously, when if we picked up from one of your facilities and we delivered it out to one of your retail customers, do you think more brokers and carriers should take into account the service that your customers, Paul, are receiving from what we're providing to you as our customer?
Yeah, I mean, 100%, right? Because you got to think about a lot of these retailers out there. They have a fines and fee structure. If you're late, if you're not on time and full, I'm getting a bill for that for your performance, right? Nothing that I did, but you just showed up late, or you didn't come pick up the shipment to begin with. And for large shippers, that's to the tune of millions of dollars. So you're literally taking money out of my pocket when you're not performing. So 100%, they have to be aware of what they're exposing shippers to by not performing, and also understanding the positive end, which is like, hey, there's value here when I'm not exposing you to these dollars, and that can almost be a play for. I know I'm a little bit more expensive than the market, but hey, if I'm not exposing you to fines that increase your cost by 3%, you can give me 1.5%, right? Like there's kind of those trade-offs, and if the data is there to support it, that's a decision that makes sense a lot of times.
So you guys do have a direct way to track kind of like, hey, carrier A has the most customer retention, and like it improves the profitability for you guys out there with your guys' customers. So you guys have a direct line essentially where it's like, hey, carrier A, they are the most profitable. They are on time the most. We have no chargebacks and stuff like that. So your guys' customer retention to your company is higher.
Yeah. So we, in our procurement process, we call that the difference between the nominal rate, or the rate that you get during the bid process. Let's say it's $2 a mile, versus the effective rate, or the rate that you actually receive once you account for on-time delivery and missed pickup. Because let's say I have a carrier that's at $2 a mile, but they're at 99% on-time delivery and 99% tender acceptance, and I've got a carrier B that's at $1.50 a mile, right? That sounds attractive during the bidding process, but then I account for fines and fees, late deliveries, tender acceptance that expose me to the spot market. Your effective rate is actually $2.50. So while at the beginning of the bid process, I should have went with carrier B that was at $1.50, I'm really paying $2.50 when I account for all these other things. So hey, go for the guy that's at higher service at $2 a mile, because that's going to be close to $2 a mile by the time you're at the end of the year. So that's I think more sophisticated procurement process. I don't know how many shippers have that kind of data to be able to do those sorts of things. I do know that there's a lot of great products out there on the market today that do those things for shippers. And so we are becoming a lot wiser and smarter in the procurement process so that we're making those, better long-term decisions, as opposed to this is what looks good during the bidding process.
I like it. I got another question from the audience here. Robert Bain as asking, do you think dialing for diesel works, or people start to learn and get more effective if they don't quit? Kind of like it is that making a high volume of calls. Do you think it's necessary to do that early on until you establish kind of your way of what's the most effective outreach?
I think so. But okay, let's just say even if you're still dialing for dollars, like I said, I've seen that work very effectively. There's some of the biggest brokers out there, that is their strategy and it works. I think the difference though is if you're going to do that is a lot of these people that are dialing for dollars are not very well educated in the industry, and they're just wasting people's time. They're not asking the right questions, or they get on the phone and they go straight into their sales pitch. Blah, 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 blah. I got to get out all these talking points. They're not asking questions to like, if you're doing more than 50% of the talking, you're making the wrong sales call, right? And I see that with a lot of these people that are dialing for dollars is they are following the script. They want to make sure that they get all of their points, all their words in, and you've turned me off right away, right? So sure, go dial for dollars, but at least have quality in the quantity, if that makes sense, right? Like have a quality call, but dial for dollars.
That makes sense. Take your time, actually research who you're going to call, and have a actual lead-in question for the business that is tailored to your prospect, as opposed to the spray and pray methodology of just ask everybody the exact same thing.
Again, especially if you get somebody on the phone, people can feel or sense how the other person on the other line is feeling, right? Like, do they have a tenseness in their voice? Do you feel like they're, you can seriously feel like some people are just under the gun. Like, man, I got to get, these guys are cracking the whip. I got to get my calls in. And then that leads to they can lead to awkward calls. It could lead to, but it's just, they're big turnoffs, right? So you got to go in there with some confidence, know what you're talking about, know kind of the business a little bit. Make sure that, okay, if everybody's got their time is valuable. Am I being of value with the time that I'm asking of this other person?
Yeah, I love it. We got time for one more, and we're going to make this quick. This is from my man, Robert Cowton. Says, RFQs provided a number of loads per lane, say Dallas to Chicago, 84 loads. RFQ never lists 2 loads per week or ships September to November. Why can this important detail be omitted?
This is a massive, I couldn't agree with you more. It's a massive opportunity, but this is also an opportunity. If that level of detail is not provided in the RFP, go ask the question to the shipper. One, I think it shows initiative, right? It's like, hey, this guy really knows what he's doing, because you can't quote a piece of business if you don't understand the piece of business that you're quoting. So just by asking and raising those questions, in my opinion, you're demonstrating that you want to quote this properly, and you know the different cost drivers that go into how you're going to be able to service the business and at what price. So if the shipper's not providing it to you, go ask the question. I think that's a fantastic move. Perfect. Go do that.
I love it. And that is probably the most valuable 30-minute conversation anybody in this industry will ever have out there. Paul, I can't thank you enough for coming on these, man. I mean, I know you're extremely busy. Like, I'm not going to tell people our private conversations, but Paul moved more freight in 1 week than some people will in their entire career. All right. So just to put that, and I'm not over exaggerating that, you guys, I'm being very, very real. So when Paul comes on this show, these questions that we feed in, you guys, you're not going to get a more valuable response out there to better prepare you to go and talk to your prospects the right way. Because it doesn't matter if you're talking to a shipper who moves 1 shipment a week, 1 full truckload a month, or 10,000 a week. You have to be prepared for this stuff. And Paul just literally laid that all out there for you, man. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today.
Always happy to be with you, Chris.
And we're going to, we'll see how many times we can get Paul to come on and do this shipper Q&A, you guys, because again, it's always better to hear it from somebody who receives your guys' outreach as opposed to somebody who just talks about what they think they might do in that situation. So Paul, thank you so much. And if you guys didn't get value out of this, I don't know what else to say. I really don't, because this is everything that you guys need. But we will be back on Monday. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.